In this lesson, I'm going to teach you about Earn Value Management, or EVM. And this one is pretty complex, or not complex, but it takes some time to get the explanation out. So I'm going to use the whiteboard drawing effect to try to teach it to you. All right, in this course, we've already talked about a work breakdown structure. So let's say I'm going to draw it in this hierarchical type of setting where we have, say, a control account, and then we break down the various work packages and maybe even have a planning package over here as we're waiting. But these various different packages that we have broken down, work breakdown structure, WBS, we're going to take those work packages and break them down even further into activities, and those are listed, of course, on our activity list. So if we take either the activities or the work packages, in either way, what we've done with that scope is laid it out across the time, and that would be, of course, our schedule. But what we've also done is we've put some monetary value or some hours to it, which gives it a cost, so some type of financial record. So they could be all in hours as well, but it's just simpler right now if we just think about it in monetary terms. Whatever currency you want to use, we're just going to use American dollars since I'm here in the United States. But if we were to take all these work packages and the various different activities, we've laid them across at a time, and we've then said, all right, these things are going to be done this day or this week or this month, and we have done so over the time of the project, and we aggregate those various different pieces and add them up day to day to day. What we end up is with our cost baseline. And our cost baseline is a time phased, so it's across the time, the length of the project until we determine that it is done. And then at this point throughout the project, we have this approved baseline that we're going to be using as a comparison so that we could find out, well, as our project is moving forward, are we ahead, are we behind, or not? So I'll erase that line for now. But the main point here is to recognize that this is over time, and it is what we are using as our baseline because it is a culmination of all the work, aka the scope, right? Oops. And the time, or how we've scheduled it, and the cost. So really, if you want to think about what we're going to measure in our earned value management, is the entire performance of the project in terms of both scope and schedule and in costs. Now, our cost baselines then, because of it being an aggregation of our project schedule and our work, it usually is often viewed or done in more of an S curve. That doesn't have to be the case because every project, of course, is different, but that's a lot of times it's what appears if we were to create this, but it doesn't have to be. But remember, what we have is we've budgeted what we expect to, let's just say this is day 3. We'll make it a very simple project. At day 3, we're expecting then, I'm going to make it very simple here. Well, we're saying that by the end of day 1, we should have gotten 3 packages or activities completed, which would have been 10 plus 10 plus 10, or $30 worth of value. Because if it is not of value to the project, then why are we doing it, correct? Hence, we would say our expected or planned value for the day 1, or at the end of day 1, is $30 of value. We abbreviate that simply to PV. So the PV would be equal to 30. Now, by the day 2, we would earn or expect to earn another, or plan to earn another $20 worth. And then here, day 3, let's say another 10. But we say the planned value, though, we don't lose the value we've earned in day 1 and the value we've earned in day 2. No, those are accumulated. If, in fact, we have earned what we plan, then the plan is by day 3 here, we have got the $30, the $20 worth, and now another 10, which combined plan is 60. So that's why this line continues to go up. It's not going to fluctuate like this as our project moves around based on what we're going to plan to earn that day. Now, in real life, the actual may be much different than what the plan was, but ideally this is what we're planning or expecting or want to see going forth. So that way we know something to base our way and our work and measure how we're doing and what we've earned and analyze whether or not we are performing to where we expect to perform. Okay, so now then, with this information of 3 days being at $60, well, let's do some analysis. Let's actually erase all this, make it nice and clean, and we will go with a new set of numbers to work off of. Okay, so what we've done here is using that same idea and the same concept, but we've taken these activities or work packages, and I'm, again, making it very simple. We're just going to go with a day, and each of these are going to also remain very simple and will be worth $10 each. And I'm also placing it the day that we expect to earn them, meaning when we expect to have that work package done. What that means is that, say this number 10 right here on day 7 could actually have started way back here even on day 1, but we actually don't realize the value until day 7. And so then in that case, I'm purely, just to keep this graph very simple, I'm just going to put that this package will gain its value that we expect on day 7. So keep things simple. So I'll erase those colors and return it back to the same. Now then, in that case, at day 1, we expect 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or $50 worth of value. Again, that's our PV, our planned value. Planned value then for day 2. So at the end of day 2, we expect the 20 plus the 70, the 20 plus the 50, which is 70, and then another 80, and then 110, 140 by day 5, 170, 170, 180, still another 180 day then, 220, and then 230. So again, if we were going to draft this with a number curve, roughly something like that. But here is another value I want you to pay attention to, is that we do in fact now have a accumulation of all the planned values that have earned or expected to be earned, which is 230 by the end of the project. That 230 is also considered your budget at the completion of your project. So BAC, budget at completion. So by the time we end this project, we are budgeting or expecting $230. Obviously, nice and simple, just 10-day project. But how we arrived at that was simply taking all the planned values throughout the project in order to get us to the point of our budgeted completion. Because again, the cost baseline is a time phase budget. So it is how this budget at completion is expected to be spent over the course of the project. And that is really just the various planned values. What we've expected in terms of scope, in terms of costs, and in terms of time. Remember? Okay, so there are 2 equations we've learned so far, or 2 values we've learned so far: your planned value and your budget at completion. Now, let's add a little bit more to this. Let's say we actually are working on this project, and by the time day 1 is complete, let's go ahead and say that everything that we expected to be done is in fact done. So, what could be said about what we have earned, which is just abbreviated quickly as EV, the earned value, the value that we have earned in the project. Well, we have planned to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, each of them worth 10. And in that case, we've earned 10 from each of those times 5, which is obviously 50. Easy math there. And in that case, we have earned $50. So now then, let's look at, if we're graphing this in the red line actually going across, at this point, at the end of day 2, the end of day 1, we have an earned value of 50. But what was the planned value? Well, the planned value was also 50. And in that case, we could put some different values together, some different equations. One is the schedule variance. Is there any difference or variance between what we planned to have earned versus what we actually earned? What did we earn? So the earned value minus what was planned. So in this case, we have 50. We planned on 50, and in that case, there's no difference. There is no variance. And that is also noted because our lines are exactly. There's no space between the red line and the blue line. There's no variance. Now, can we do the same for costs? Well, yeah, we can do a cost variance, but we need something else. It does include the earned value, but the planned value was based upon the schedule when we planned to have earned it, which is at the end of day 1. For costs, though, well, we estimated in our cost estimates that it was going to be about $10 worth of effort or labor or equipment, materials, or resources, however you want to define it. And now then, at this point, we have to figure out how much did it actually cost us to demonstrate actual cost. So the money. How much did it actually cost us to earn the value that we had sought? The actual cost was, in fact, 50. All the labor costs, equipment costs was exactly as we planned. And as you may gather, then if our actual cost was 50, our plan was to spend, what we earned was 50, and that would mean there is no cost variance, CV. Great, these are fantastic. Now, my project is very small. We only have $230 budget, pretty narrow. But let's say we're at a staff meeting, and there you are, and there's me, and we're giving our updates on our various projects. But the thing is that we have two very different projects. You have a $1 million 1-year project, and I have only, as you see here, a 10-day project. So in that case, where can we compare? How do we put ours, two various different projects on the same scale, if you will? So we can measure and see how, in fact, we're doing, especially if we're under one program and we want to try to keep things together and understood so that we can collaborate and know where the cost as a program level is happening, but also within our own project itself. Well, there's a couple different indexes or indices that we can use. Obviously, there's going to be a schedule index and there is going to be a cost index. And we're doing an index on the performance of the schedule and at the performance of the cost. Hence, we have a schedule performance index and a cost performance index. This is going to give us now a ratio of the values, not just a raw difference between the two values. And then, if you can guess, we're going to use the same values. So we're still going to, for the schedule, we're going to still use our earned as well, because that's here. And our costs, we're still going to use our earned. But instead of subtracting, as we've done here in our different variances, we are going to divide. So in the same type of information is going to be extracted, but we're going to get a ratio. So this one is just like we had here, but now planned value is divided by, and this one we had actual costs. So plugging in the numbers again, I'll use a black pencil here. Our earned value is 50. Our planned value is 50. So that should equal 1. And that's the value you're actually seeking. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. It's kind of like saying, well, I have one thing for you to do, and you did one thing. So it's a 1-to-1. That's good. Well, or at least it means you are exactly where you planned to be. It's a 1-to-1, or sometimes written 1.0. In either case, a 1 at that bar, at that level, that's where you want to be. If you're higher than that bar or lower than that bar, well, there could be reasons for that. Maybe you are ahead of schedule and you're getting more output than expected. Maybe you are behind and getting less expected output. You could even put some control limits in there that if anything were to go outside a certain control level, well, in that case, we want to put an assignable cause to why. Why are we so far out the boundaries that we expected, whether it's maybe a sigma level that we've placed it at, or we just said, that the number 0.5 or 1.5, whatever it might be, whatever we have set that is particular to this particular project. Well, what is it going to be? And in that case, maybe if our number is so far behind, we're going to have to tell why is that the case. Likewise, you might have to say, well, why are we so far ahead of schedule? Why, you might ask, why would that be important? Well, it is important because you might ask, or your team is asking, or your sponsor, or whomever might be wondering, why is it that you had planned, in this case, let's say this is a 2.0, and this is only day 1, and you plan to get 50, but you're actually doubling that value. You're at 100. What is it? Maybe it's good. Maybe it's bad. Maybe you were thinking you had to go into the system and reconfigure everything, and actually, no, you didn't yet. You just saved all that time. Everything was done within minutes versus days as expected. Whatever the case, but you should be able to justify it. You should have an assignable reason or assignable cause, and that's just part of control. And we're going to talk about control limits and how to use all that more in the quality lessons. But for right now, you can also note that you could use it in the earned value management just as well. All right, that's the schedule performance index. And same thing goes then for the cost performance index. We had the earned value of 50. The actual cost was also 50. And that too is 1 or 1.0. And if it helps, if you want to think in a monetary sense, it's 1.00. The reason I say that is because you had planned to spend, for instance, $1. You spent $1. That sometimes helps my students understand, well, if I had a ratio, let's say that equals 0.92, well, I expected to spend $1, but I'm actually what I'm getting back, the earnings from that is only 92 cents. I'm actually getting less for the money that I'm spending. Versus if it's higher than that, let's say 1.0, that 1.10 is saying that for every $1 I expected to spend, I'm actually getting $1.10 of value from it. And similar to our schedule, we could put our control limits to, well, why are we exceeding so much or exceeding or going so badly down the other way? And you should be able to have an assignable cause once it goes outside your expected control limits. Because, as you know, we're going to be fluctuating. These values are expected to change from day to day to day to day. So let's take another day and do some more values where they're not as simple as this example. So I'm going to erase all this. And let's fast forward to halfway through our project. At the end of day 5, we had a planned value of 140. Now, here's another question I want to ask you. Well, let's say, since I didn't bring this up before, let's say at day 3, this one, there's only one thing to do. Let's say I got 50% of it done. At the end of day 3, let's say everything up until that is done, but this one's only worth 10. So in my thinking, we had planned to earn 80, but I got half of this done. Does that mean I earned 50% of $10? Or no? I'm asking you because there's no right or wrong answer to that. Because in some schools of thought, it's, well, if you don't have anything to show for it, what value do you have? Or it could be something that says, well, 50% of work is still work of value and it's getting us towards where we want to be. So it could be 0 or 100 or zero sum, where you're saying it's all or nothing. So you either earn all that. So in this case, in this scenario here, I would say, no, you've not earned anything, so we're not going to say that we've earned that value yet because there's nothing to show for a completed part of it. Or you might be in the thinking that, well, at least 50% is still 50% of the value that has been earned. Again, that is up to you and your project team. That's why we have a cost management plan. That's why we have the plan cost management process that you're going to learn and you figure these things out and what works for your organization, and using the organizational process assets that in the PMO might guide you on where you want to best manage this type of equation. Okay, so that's just kind of a thought experiment. All right, returning to the end of day 5, we had a planned value, as you recall, of 140. That was planned. No, regardless of what has happened before, even if you count that 50% on day 3, I'm still saying at the day of 5, this was planned. Because remember, this was an approved baseline. It is hopefully not going to change unless there's a lot of reasons to make it change. And we're going to go through the formal change control to make it change if necessary. But this is the plan, that this is what we're gauging ourselves to. So we need to know the values in which to analyze whether or not we are performing in terms of the expectations. So this line was our earned value. And let's say it goes up and we're somewhere here, maybe these 2 have been pulled forward and we did them in day 5. We did them early. And in that case, our earned value is actually 160. Now let's also do our actual cost, and I'll go the other way just to kind of give us some different numbers. No, you know what? Let's also go high. Let's say, but to earn that value, we really paid some overtime or had some extra equipment, and it cost us 170. All right. We've got the 3 values that we're needing in order to perform or to run our equations for the earned value management. So the first one we wanted to solve was schedule variance. The next one is a cost variance, and we need to do our schedule performance index and our cost performance index. Well, if you want to try on your own, if you recall, the schedule variance was to take the earned value, and subtract the plan value. So our plugging of the information here, we have earned value of 160 minus the plan of 140, and that difference or variance is 20. So to the positive. So we're actually above by $20. We've earned $20 more than we had planned to earn at this point in the project. Okay, the cost variance, we are looking at 2 values, the earned value, and again minus the cost to earn it, so the actual cost. Plug in those numbers, also 160 like we had before, this time minus 170, which gives us a negative of $10 in value. The schedule performance index, if you recall, 2 is the same numbers that we had here. Those are all the same, but we are going to divide. So schedule performance schedule performance index, we're going to divide by EV, or divide EV by it, and actual cost for this cost performance index. Plugging those numbers in, we had 160 divided by 140, and we had 160 divided by 170. Pulling out my calendar because I can't do that at the top of my head. So 160 divided by 140 equals, all right, let's just say 1.14. We'll just round it that far. And then we'll take 160 divided by 170. Oops. 160 divided by 170. And that's about 94. So 0.94. And what's that information telling us? Well, two things. Schedule-wise, as you probably could tell just by the variance, but in a ratio, we wanted to be, or expected to be at 1, and we're actually at a 1.14. Same for the cost. We expected to be at a 1, but we're actually at a 9.4. So two different values. One's a ratio and one's just a raw difference. So you're welcome to keep practicing these. You can make up some numbers. Those are the simple equations, the base ones. In the next video, I'm going to talk about how we go about forecasting how the project is going in relationship to the overall project, as well as what do we need to do if at this particular point in our project, what we need to compare or work at in order to complete according to where we want to be or where we thought we would be. We're going to go through that. That's a TCPI. We'll talk about the variance at completion we expect and all the other things, and I'll talk about that again in the next video. But for right now, know that we have the schedule variance, cost variance, schedule performance index, and the CPI, or cost performance index, that you can start practicing on your earned value management.